Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Committee on General and Housing. And it is Wednesday, March 12th, still 2025. We are at this point going to begin our testimony with some clarification from our legislative counsel on H 461. So Sophie, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good afternoon, Sophie Zagatni from the Office of Legislative Counsel. And I'm just coming back in this afternoon. I was asked to come back to answer a question regarding how 461 affects current FMLA, Federal Medical Leave Act, Family Medical Leave Act policy requiring covered employers to continue providing health insurance to employees on unpaid leave. So I just wanted to be clear, the draft bill that you have in front of you, if you look at page 8, you'll see there are 3 asterisks in the middle of the page at line 14. So as there were no changes to those sections, C and D, they weren't included here, but section C provides that the employer shall continue employment benefits for the duration of the leave at the level and under the conditions coverage would be provided if the employee continued in employment continuously for the duration of the leave. The employer may require that the employee contribute to the cost of the business during the leave at the existing rate of employee contribution. So in other words, if there are employees taking leave under the PFLA, the Vermont statute, their employer is required to continue their health benefits during their leave, the same as under the FMLA.
This is an existing law.
Right, this is existing law. There was no change, so that's why it was not included in the draft bill.
Is there a difference in the definition of employer?
Yes.
Could you explain that?
Yeah, so the definition of a covered employer under federal law is 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius of the employee's work site. Under this, under the current law.
As it is now.
Under current law, right, as it is now, and this is not changing under this bill, it is 10 or more employees for some of the leave and 15 or more employees for family leave. So all the other ones are 10 or more. So it's a much lower threshold in Vermont than it is under the federal law.
Does this change that?
No.
Does it change who's covered
Well,
or what's covered to leave? Why you're
right,
allowed
it
to leave?
changes the definition of family members so that it can cover more people. The employees' family members is a much bigger pool than it was before. And it also adds that you can now use the 12 weeks of unpaid leave for other purposes. So that was the bereavement leave up to 2 weeks, exigency leave, and safe leave.
Was it 12 weeks under current
Yes.
law and it's 12 weeks now?
Yes.
Total.
Yes.
It's just that it's a broader population and you can use it more flexibly.
Right.
And I just want to confirm that when you're saying the employee coverage of health benefits, that doesn't change the percentage. Sorry, I asked that very wrong and then got very distracted by myself. So as an, it was fun to watch. As an employer, okay, let's just say 50% of my employees' benefits. And they go out on leave currently, and they're eligible for PFMLA. I still have to pay 50%. We're not asking them to pay 100% of the benefit. It's still at that same rate.
Right. So if you had like an 80-20 split and the employee normally pays 80%, they normally pay 20%. If they're out on leave, the employer can still ask them to continue to pay the 20% towards their health insurance.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions of council by the committee?
I feel like there were more earlier anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Then we'll take our time now. While we're waiting, I just want to say I was absent because the committee bill was in a walkthrough in the Environment Committee. And that walkthrough drive-by. The drive-by lasted 2 hours, in which there were 3 witnesses. And no,
And you
no,
weren't really one of them.
I was not one of them.
Wow.
And there was no straw poll yet. I could be pulled out at any time to go back to that, and I feel like I have to. I mean, I have to, it's the committee bill. I have to pay attention to that, in which case Ashley will preside, and that could happen to me anytime. I don't know if they've reconvened. I have no idea what's going on, so we'll see. Anyway, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just wanted you to understand why I was absent. I apologize, but I felt I had to do it. Further questions of Sophie? Is the committee satisfied? Can we?
I obviously was not here. I think what it might be warranted is a committee discussion
Yes.
rather than, yeah.
Right, I
was
just wondered
gonna
if we
say,
can,
I'm not sure if there are any other questions for Sophie.
we've now heard some testimony. I'm sorry, do we have testimony left for this as planned? I was absent, so,
Not
okay,
If your trucks that they'll send me contacts for
Yeah.
people.
but I mean, the people who were listed did
Yeah.
testify, okay. So why don't we bring this up to the committee at this point and discuss where we are and about it. You look like you have something to say.
No, I don't.
Okay, so thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Sophie, before you go, now that I think of it,
Be ready.
one of the bills that no, actually, who would it be? I guess it's not you, it'd be Cameron, so it doesn't matter. Thank you. So, what are people feeling about the status of this bill, where we are, how, thoughts about this bill? We do all this listening, now I'm asking you to talk, damn it. Yes,
I said while you were absent that I strongly object to being asked to vote out a bill, having had now the very same witnesses that we had in the last version of this bill be the only witnesses that we hear from. I don't think it's right. So if I were to vote right now, regardless of what the subject even is of the bill, I would vote no.
what kind of witness would you like to hear from?
I would not like to lead with lobbyists or so-called advocates as the only witnesses. I don't think that's right.
Do you have any further thoughts as to other types of witnesses that you'd like to hear? I mean, to say, we'll never hear them unless you tell us. I'm just asking, I don't want you to,
Well,
I don't
after
want
I-
you to have a thought.
After I made that
Sure.
proclamation, I went back and looked at all of the witness list from H66 from last year, which was this bill, but paid family leave included, a lot of stuff about the paid part.
Family.
But it's quite a long list of witnesses and, rather than just have 2 business representatives, we could have anybody, not just representing each side of the business community.
Can I ask a question on your question to hopefully answer? So please forgive me when I say my memory is not fantastic. I believe we had Carrie Brown, who was in here earlier today. I believe she had testified on the safe leave aspect of 66. While I don't believe it's part of her shared experience, the Women's Commission, but that's still an advocate.
Well, I just mean, I don't think we've heard enough testimony. I don't think that's adequate. And this bill stretches far beyond just the business community.
I don't think we're gonna find someone who's personally experienced safe leave that might feel like that might be something, but I do remember during H66 conversations, we did have folks come in for bereavement, and we can reach out to those folks if that works. And I believe we have had folks reach out to come in. No?
Magali,
they
who has reached out?
Gail Zatz and the Coalition on Family Leave or something, but no one has provided me with a contact. They just said they know of people who might be able to testify.
All right. Other thoughts and comments? I hear you. Other thoughts, comments? People want to talk about where they are on this, or do you feel like nobody wants to talk after hearing
Yeah.
more witnesses?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, I don't have as much of an issue with having, like, I can understand your perspective, Rep. Burrows, but just to voice, I'm feeling like I can, just based on my own, shared humanity, I can understand why these measures are important and necessary. I think that, that's where I start. And so I guess for me, it was important to hear from the businesses because that's the perspective that I don't have as readily available to myself.
Mhm.
But I see what you're saying about process and what some of the other folks were voicing just about like needing some time to digest. And I feel like we kind of got that by having, a big few hours of break. So I'm comfortable. I'm just saying if there's if there was a vote, I would feel comfortable voting yes.
Others on the committee, where are you?
I don't feel comfortable living this.
I was less, only just because I think that when you have your viewpoints or your previous experiences going into things, that sort of skews things. For me, this seemed basic enough to not, like, it's benefiting. It doesn't seem like it's super controversial. And so I'm fine with going for this only because of having gone through previous testimony. So I can't speak on the process of this session. And so I'm trying to separate myself from that, but it's really hard to walk into a room and pretend you don't know anything. So, right, when you know that. So I'm trying to have that. So me personally, I would be okay with this. It doesn't cost anything. There's no money involved. And it's helping to include family members who were not generally included. And I was a big advocate for that last biennium. So personal interest. So I would be okay with this, but I respect other people's decisions. So, yeah.
I own a business and I can say this much about that. I can relate to what you said. But if you have people, when they have a tragedy in their life, come back to work too soon, you're not getting what you need from them as far as their work ability. So that's why I'm so in favor of it, as much as unpaid leave, or I was even thinking 3 days of paid leave and then the week of unpaid leave. But I know that that's very difficult on small businesses.
This is all at the discretion of the employee as to whether they want to request.
Yeah, my understanding is that the contractual terms,
Employee may.
yeah.
I think that the distinction is that this already exists. But this is added language. That's why it's not to me,
It's adding family members and it's adding the safe.
the safe and the bereavement. So this already exists. We're not discussing I mean, it is a bill on unpaid leave because that's what it is, but we already have unpaid
We
leave
already have.
as this exact thing.
Mhm.
But we're just adding family members that are equitable.
We're expanding the definition.
Whereas now, to me, it is not equitable the way it is defined. And then we're also adding bereavement and safe leave.
And qualifying exigency, right, which is like.
Right.
active
But
duty service.
if we were doing a bill, like this was the first, like a bill on this whole thing, we would need, for me, like months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a huge thing. This is just already law, but we're adding those things and the definition of family member to be more equitable for society.
I would have to, I mean, I would like to sleep on it.
Yeah.
Definitely, and mull it over because my brain works.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm definitely, as a chair, inclined to wait a little, and possibly, we'll talk about witnesses in a minute. But there's no question that this imposes an additional potential financial burden on an employer, because it could mean that someone takes a leave before they couldn't because their spouse they're not married to their partner. I'm just using that as an example. They're not married to their partner. They have a kid, or I don't know, but they're not married to their partner. And so I couldn't take the leave. Whereas under this bill, I could. So it's doing that. And so my question is there anything you think that might help you or anyone else who's worried about this, okay? Is there anything procedurally we can do other than give people time to sleep on it to address any concern you might have about this? The chamber, I'm sorry here for the chamber testimony, but the reason for the chambers was concern over impact on employers and whom they typically represent before us. And so I don't even know, I wasn't here what she testified, but
She said that this version was not going to, that they, well, I wouldn't say she was like, this rocks, but it was like, this version of the bill is what was needed to have their,
support. Do they support it or they find it acceptable?
I would say, what would
They
you
don't
call
oppose
it?
They find it acceptable.
They don't
I-
oppose, well, they don't oppose it with the changes.
Okay, is there anything else you can think
Yeah,
of?
Right, there was one thing that we have to, that we marked for Sophie, that, we had discussed would be a policy decision. The committee seemed fine with making that change, I think.
Well, there were two things, right? There was Ashley's point about matching with FMLA.
So I talked to Sophie, it would be better to keep it
As the way we have
at
it,
the 30, yeah.
So.
And then
the 2 weeks.
up to 2 week, rather than up to 1 week. She thought it was
Hmm.
1 week.
Yeah. And that was,
She's ready to.
yeah, that was just an error.
Oh, okay. So I guess what I'm asking you is there?
And they were on mail for it?
What?
In the draft.
In the draft.
Okay.
I'm just asking whether there's anything we can do besides either A, bringing in possibly another witness, or B, more than a night's sleep. In other words, I want people to feel ready. However you're going to vote, I want you to feel, yeah, I'm ready to vote, that kind of thing. And so if there's anything we can do here, we should. Yes.
I'm sorry, if you have a response. As a coda to that especially is, and what does a delay mean in terms of
If we delay
how
enough,
likely this?
if we delay, I mean, it is true. We can try to get another witness in and we can certainly can delay a day. But at a certain point, it's gonna push it over to crossover, and that's not the end of the world. We'll still take it up and we'll do it, and it'll. We've talked about this, but because we were talking about 169,
Yeah.
I'm not good with those numbers.
There's a lot
Okay.
of them.
Neither am I.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not like the world ends on Friday. I think we damn well better get our committee bill out of here before Friday. Because it's got two more committees to go
I
to.
cannot face my constituents
Right,
if we're gonna
okay.
get a housing bill out of
We're
here.
getting it. We're gonna do it. Forget I said that. But anyway, if, it's not like we stop. We take bills up that we want to take. We're gonna take up 160.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, we're gonna take up
So
Laura's
many
bill.
bills that we are gonna take up.
And we're gonna give it the time it needs and get the witnesses that we need. I mean, we gotta do things right here. I want people to feel good about what we've done. And if they vote no, they know they're doing it, voting a good no. If they're voting yes, they're voting a good yes. So it's just that after crossover, we can vote bills out. They go to the floor can take up the bills, pass them to the Senate. It's true that the Senate doesn't have an obligation to take up the bill, but they don't have an obligation to take up bills anyway. If you're asking, ergo, what is the difference between bills passed before and
Yes.
after? I must tell you, I don't know.
I think the distinction is that crossover is more for the second year of a biennium.
Yeah,
Because then you start over.
yeah, because that, I know from my last biennium experience, people get, put it this way, if you're feeling pressure now,
Oh, my goodness.
you feel downright twitchy.
And in an election year.
Yeah, right.
I
The
guess-
second year of the biennium is harder because when it's over, it's over. In other words, when we adjourn, we no longer exist. We're just citizens. So.
Until January. At least there.
No, theoretically,
Right.
theoretically, if you're
In terms of
reelected.
being, making new
Yeah.
legislation, in terms of
Right.
being. a
This
voice.
legislature
ends.
It'll be a different legislature.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I'll just say that nothing like is like more important than anyone else's. Like, I'm not pushing this in any way besides the fact that why I feel like this is something that we could accomplish now is that then it can go into effect and create a more equitable system for the people who are excluded. And you want lived experience too, like, I mean, I'm a member of this committee and happy to talk about, also like when my dad died when I was a kid and my mom had to take, like she left her job like without any sort of leave and it was really difficult. I mean, we all like there's lived experience like everywhere and we can have people come in and talk about that too. Again, I am unsure. It's not my wheelhouse about safe leave and domestic violence and how someone, if that's something people that's people's stories and I don't push that, but bereavement is something that many of us have faced and I think just as an equity to have that available for people in the same way that it is if someone breaks their leg or something else. It is very hard. And as someone who, like I said, grew up where my dad passed away when I was very young and it was just me and my mom and she had to handle everything and didn't have that time or security back at her job when I was a kid. So I've experienced it and it's something, one of the reasons I ran for office was to work on this type of policy. And we worked very hard last session on some things that couldn't make it. And to me, this felt like a small but giant step in the impact that it could make for a lot of our constituents and the state, adding these additional measures to a law that already exists, but just isn't equitable for a lot of people.
Tom?
Just to clarify some of the questions I was asking earlier, about cost. One, my consternation about the cost in business and small business in Vermont does not come out of this bill.
Okay, give me its.
It did trigger it, okay,
Pre-existing.
maybe, but it's not a problem with this bill. And at the same time as still being on a learning curve with small business, I spent 25 years as full-time clergy, and I have walked through all of these situations with many families. And we're alive, so I'm not gonna give you any details, but the rural context of my own communities and my experience is such that these are all no-brainers. You know, if there's somebody in a whatever relationship and there's a crisis, a house burns down, kid is chronically ill, all these, the community does whatever you gotta do. You know, most of the employers, in local communities will do that, but I do recognize that there are employers that are not going to unless they have to. So I can vote for this bill. I like the idea of giving a little more time, because I may think of a question at 11 o'clock at night. Because that's the way my mind works. I might not think about it while we're here at the table. But this is, I can support the bill.
Well, I'll tell you what, how does this sound? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I just, as a final, something that
Oh,
came
okay,
up,
we have
I
several
think, for
people
me,
talking.
that, I think what I'm sensing is just that there are those of us that, we tend to be thinkers and askers, and I at least like to have a real handle on what's, like, for me, this is a marketplace of ideas. Like this, there's no, like, it's not about egos. It's just like understanding how something comes before us or doesn't come before us, and why certain things, might feel like, oh, this is a good, easy bill, to somebody that's been dealing with the issues already for a really long time. I can understand the frustration when people who've been here for 3 minutes say, hold on, and we're like rehashing a million things that seem like a given. Like if I was sitting in House Transportation again and somebody came in and was like, what do you mean? What does walkable town mean? I'd be like, God, so I think I think what we're hearing and seeing is a lot the result of this, like, we've been dealing, and so there are folks that are like, we need to value the process of all, for all of our bills, with the reality of we have a limited amount of hours that we get to deal with. And so if we want to put out only one bill and dig really, really deep, that's all we'll put out. And this bill, having had some more time to digest and hearing more of, what it does and doesn't do, and having time, I can see why it was presented in the way that it was presented, as like, here's some quick line, like it wasn't even on the list of bills that we had talked about before leaving for town meeting. And so I guess, it's, to me, it's understandable that folks are kind of feeling like, I need some time, or maybe more testimony, but I'm willing to not make like an example of it, or like based on the principle of I didn't have enough time. I'm not gonna vote no on this. I think it's important enough and simple and direct enough that it's a good measure.
Thank you, Mary, and then Elizabeth. And Saudi.
No,
I'm sorry. Okay, Mary, Saudi, and then Elizabeth.
I appreciate what you're saying and I understand. However, one of the first bills that I worked on when I first arrived here was paid family leave. And
when was
believe
that,
me,
Mary?
that was 9 years ago. 9 years ago.
Bless you.
And we took testimony from an array of people. We also had a public hearing. And what was nice to hear is that there already were businesses doing this. And do they have an incredible a range of employees. You treat your employees well, they'll go the extra mile for you, that is for sure. We took testimony from a young woman that said she planned her having her baby over a long weekend so she could get back to work on Tuesday and and keep her job. And I had one committee member who said, what does a woman need to take time off when she has a baby? The baby sleeps. Well, out of my mouth came, obviously, it was a male. You've never had a baby. And I had another, I
Just
had
the
a,
baby, the rest of your body, like just your own body.
I had a committee mate that said he was a teacher and he and his wife went to Germany and he taught there. His first daughter was born there. Not only was everything paid for, but she got leave and he got leave.
In Canada too.
And they do so much more in Germany for their families. They have family days. They have mother-daughter days. Their kids go to school a little bit longer and college is free. What is wrong with us in the richest country in the world? I think, I totally support this bill. I think people should. Pardon?
It is expensive to live in Germany.
Of course.
That's why.
You have to pay for it somehow, where we're paying for it anyway.
Well,
If people can't use, people use the ER as their doctor's office, we're paying for it anyway. And they don't even, some of them don't have a place to live, so they stay there at the hospital.
I'd like to make sure that
So,
everybody who can speak before they leave gets a chance to speak. We're not gonna vote this afternoon. Okay,
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, and on the bereavement part, there is no question about it. Because I went back to work, I had the 3 days bereavement for my husband and my boss said, take as much time as you need. I took, a few more days extra and I went back to work and every morning I'd be crying in the way to work and try to, and not have people say, are you all right? Are you all right? You need the time, definitely, you need the time. And if someone is sick, you obviously, and if you own a business and one of your relatives dies, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna close your business for a couple, for a few days? I mean, come on, families are important. Families should be number one.
well, I agree with you.
And I understand business because we own a grocery store, we own an insurance business.
And I am committed to taking care of my employees, but I'm also committed to not losing my children's home doing so. And it's that close sometimes.
I'm not
It
trying
really
to
is.
interrupt. I'm so sorry. I know this is a constructive conversation, but we do have Rep. Lamont who hasn't had a chance to say something, and I think she's.
I am. I'm gonna sneak out the door in 2 seconds. I'm gonna be super brief. I just wanted to offer that in the same vein of just previous testimony. I think we took testimony from Vermont Network. And so maybe Kara Casey or someone.
The Vermont Network will be submitting written testimony from lived experience. It doesn't
Okay.
have anyone with lived experience currently available.
Yes, so that was just my only suggestion and just saying I respect the process. I want people to do what feels best for them. So, I mean, I feel like this is something that we could discuss in the next 2 days and probably address on Friday and like have, if we could get it on the calendar to address by Friday, I think that, but not to have conversation on Friday, to be done by Friday. I think, in my opinion, I think that's something that can happen and let's hear, I respect people's process and I understand where they're coming from. And I also, let people go through the thing, but I think this is good and I think this is a constructive conversation.
good.
So thank you.
Elizabeth, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna respond to what you were saying about not costing the business, but I really think that you would cost the business. The thing is that if your spouse or your close family member whom you are charged with caring for,
That might would do it.
no,
I mean, that's a difference.
let me finish. If your spouse or somebody you are charged with caring for is sick and your job won't let you have any leave to take care of them, you will leave.
I'm not,
He's saying.
yeah, I'm not, I don't have a problem with the unpaid leave. I only get concerned when
It's a
it's not
small
affordable because you lose a worker, you lose income, and you have to cover the cost of the insurance. The paid leave would be much more difficult than this.
And all I'm saying is that you're gonna lose a worker anyway. That if you can't, if the worker can't,
Right.
But we're not talking about paid leave.
Yeah,
And I-
this isn't, you know.
no, we're talking about unpaid leave.
Yeah, you're.
I believe
I don't have a problem with the unpaid leave. This I can support.
He's there.
That was,
He keeps
And I
going.
give, I have one, my.
Somehow you've gotten yourself in the position where you must, there's something you have on your forehead.
Well.
Hit me. No.
It's because they're real, I'm responding to something
Yeah.
else, but I would, you know, there's a big gap between the small business and medium business. There are rungs missing in the ladder. We give people help getting a roof, getting their meals, getting a job. But once they have a roof and a job, unless they come into a whole lot of money, there are a whole bunch of rungs that are missing when it comes to starting a business from scratch and building it up. If you don't have capital, serious capital, you don't get to that next rung. And a lot of the people we're trying to help, that's where they're going to stay. Because we have so many requirements, the increments are too big and too infrequent as you grow a business in Vermont to do it without a lot of capital.
What I'd like to do, because we are,
sorry, real quick. Gail had a comment that she wanted to make.
Well, actually,
I was gonna say that, did you know that 92% of our businesses have fewer than 20 employees?
I wonder why.
But just
I
saying,
mean,
look at,
yeah. I mean, it's comforting. I'm in good company.
actually, I was just piggybacking on to ask if Elizabeth would have been comfortable with somebody testifying from an agency or something, a lived experience. But
we have.
again, I mean, after age 66 failed last year, I put forward a bill with this because I thought the work that we did on this was really important, especially for the definitions and making sure that the definitions that we put in there were, wind up being everywhere. I think it's important. I just really, I don't like the process that we went through. It's not even it's not even on the wall.
Well, it's online. I mean, I don't know if it's not cut out.
I'm just saying that when we were talking last week about what we were gonna, or before break, about what we were gonna do this week, it wasn't part of what we discussed.
And Ledge Council is very backed up. I have pulled probably 3 bills in the last few weeks, so I can't say when I submitted it, how long it takes to get it back.
I understand that.
They're like
But what I'm saying is that it was not. And I'm not saying you have to discuss it with me. I'm just saying that it didn't feel like a transparent in any way process. And that the expectation would be that we would hear from lobbyists from 2 sides of the business community, and then pass it. I think it's.
But we're not. We're gonna get people for you to
So-
have that.
So I just want to register that I support the bill,
Yes.
but I don't support the process that we have had.
And I think I am speaking just for myself, nobody else here. And I want to apologize if our communication was not clear. So if you look at our agenda, we did have TBA tomorrow and Friday. I think our thought was that we'd have the testimony today, be just kind of the start, and I absolutely hear you when you say you don't want to start with the businesses. And we absolutely could have communicated better. I think we were looking, and I'm sorry because I wasn't here and I was on Zoom, where I thought we did talk about the potential changes that Rep. Krasnow had to H33. But that I also think that we've been thrown several curveballs from our work in the committee with yesterday hearing about survivor benefits, and then today with the drive-through or drive-by an environment that we still have work to do on our committee bill. And personally for me, and I'm speaking just for myself, those two bills take precedence. I
The
don't,
committee bill ends.
and survivor benefits.
Yeah.
And I say that just because, you know, we've already passed out survivor benefits, and I think we need to wrap around, make sure that we finish that conversation and feel good about that. It is not an option to not get our committee bill out. And I do apologize if that's taken precedent in my mind. And that's been my focus. So I know I absolutely could have communicated my thoughts on how we would handle this and the process to handle this specific bill better. So I do want to apologize for that. And I think, like I said, I don't speak for all of us, but I think that was the idea that we had tomorrow and Friday to talk more about this bill. But then got thrown some curveballs.
What I propose is the following. We're not gonna vote this bill now. So you will definitely, anyone who would like a night to sleep on it, should sleep well and think, okay. Second of all, we will see what kind of availability there is for an additional witness. And we will report back tomorrow on that. If we have an opportunity to vote, given the priorities that our vice chair just expressed and I share, that is the committee bill and H57. We have the time and we can have the testimony, we will, and then we will vote. If we do not have the time and cannot get the testimony, then we'll do it next week. Period. I think doing it right is very important. So that's how we're gonna go. And I think it's okay with everyone. Tomorrow, we have a walkthrough of the committee bill as revised, and then at 9 o'clock. The only thing I can say, by golly, is that
Have you reloaded the
yes, let's take a look. Thursday. I show a walkthrough at 9 and testimony on survivor benefits at 11.
Yeah.
I don't think the walkthrough is gonna take more than half an hour because there's very few changes.
You had asked for it to be walked through and potential vote, so
Yeah.
I was assuming there was
Right,
going to be discussion.
I think,
And the full walkthrough is about an hour and a half.
Could we, because you're so wonderful, could we change that to walkthrough, discussion, and potential vote?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
okay, then we'll see how that goes.
Can I ask a question of the committee? Would it be beneficial instead of walkthrough, when we have walkthroughs, we also add committee discussion?
Yeah.
Can we do that going forward? Thank you.
As far as I could, just so you know, we had 3 potential inputs coming from other committees. One was, as you know, having to do with the House Committee on Human Services. And they wanted to hear how we were dealing with VHIF. That issue has been resolved. We had a drive-by with them. They voted 9-2. I was wrong. It wasn't 10-1. It was 9-2. Straw poll to support it with language changes. There is one, at least as, I'm sorry, I've been doing other things, but at least as of a few hours ago, there was one section which had been approved by the chair, by me, by ledge council, that we hadn't heard from Alex Farrell, because, and it had to be him because what's his name?
Director Gilpin is out sick.
Gilpin was out sick. So that's possibly will be resolved by tomorrow. I was approached yesterday by Alice Emmons telling me that there was a potential overlap problem associated with the capital bill because of the funding of water and sewer. I said, we started last night. We talked this morning. And first thing, and she referred me to 4 of the members of her committee. I briefed them. Then Alice came up to me this afternoon before the floor and told me it's resolved. So that's resolved.
Huh.
2 down. Okay, the third was, as I mentioned to you, the Environment Committee. I have a feeling that what is going to happen is a slight revision of the section on appeals that relates to the standing. I have a feeling there's just, it won't change much, but it'll be tweaking. I do not know if that is going to be done by tomorrow. So it may be that that's going to be kind of hanging out there a little bit. If it is done, we will be in a position to have discussion, possible vote. If it isn't done, we'll just have discussion. Okay?
The fourth, in like Ways and Means, I believe.
No, it hasn't gone through. No, it's going to go through. Then the next thing it has to happen is it goes through. I'm not saying, then we pass it out. When we pass it out, it goes to the floor. And it's referred immediately to Ways and Means, and then it's referred to approps. And it's okay if it gets to approps late in the week, because they're not going to know what they're going to do until they have the budget worked out. So that's the path. It's not like we have lots of extra time in this path. Okay, so I'd like to adjourn. Is that all right? We are